Trump has urged pregnant women not to take the painkiller paracetamol because of an unproven link to autism. He didn't provide any evidence, but said he was acting because the number of children with autism was soaring, though that may be because of better and broader diagnosis. The president made a series of sweeping but unsubstantiated claims about health. The links between paracetamol, which is commonly known as Tylenol in the US, and autism remain unproven. UK health officials stress that the drug remains the safest painkiller available to pregnant women. Mr. Trump saying that pregnant women should fight like hell to avoid taking the painkiller. Have a listen.
I want to say it like it is. Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. If you just can't, I mean, it's fight like hell not to take it. There may be a point where you have to, and that you have to work out with yourself, so don't take Tylenol.
With me is our health reporter Jim Reid, who has been looking at President Trump's comments. And Jim, we've also been just looking at some of our viewers and our readers' questions around this. It's causing quite a lot of concern. Can I start with a very sort of basic thing? Paracetamol, Tylenol, are they the same thing?
Essentially exactly the same thing. So Tylenol is the brand name in the States and in Canada, North America mainly, used to sell this pain relief, but across the rest of the world it's generally used known as paracetamol. It's the kind of thing you'd buy in your local pharmacy or the supermarket in the UK, for example. And
if you are pregnant, it is the only thing generally that a GP or your local doctor will prescribe or tell women it is safe to take, is that right?
Generally, ibuprofen is another option, but that's not normally recommended in pregnancy. It's about 20 weeks. The advice is always to ask your doctor if you're taking any medication in pregnancy if you have concerns, but generally paracetamol is the one that doctors, medical groups across the world recommend as first-line, front-line pain relief for someone in pregnancy.
OK, so let's talk about what President Trump has said, what scientists and experts are saying. Does paracetamol, if taken when you're pregnant, cause autism?
Absolutely not, is the simple answer to that. President Trump was talking about a cause of autism, and I think almost every scientist, researcher that's looked at this in the past would agree that there is no single cause of autism. It's a mix of predominantly genetics, so they think more than 100 different genes could be in play when it comes to autism. Potentially with some environmental factors mixed in some people. So, for example, we do know there is a correlation well reported between the age of mothers and fathers in particular, and whether you're more likely to have an autistic child. Fractionally more likely. It's a small increase. Also, some drugs as well. We know there's a link. There has been a link talked about in the past into the low birth rate of babies. So the question is not so much, is paracetamol causing autism? Could it be another one of those factors that maybe could slightly increase your risk in pregnancy? And even there, the evidence that we've got is inconclusive. So they were talking yesterday in the news conference, President Trump and his colleagues, about a study that was published in the summer. This was Harvard University and Mount Sinai Medical School, and they did a review of all the main evidence that's out there. They looked at 50 different studies. They felt they found a small correlation between both. Now, that's not a cause. It means that the rates of autism were slightly higher, they felt, looking at the studies, in women who'd taken paracetamol, but there could be other reasons for that. There's no certainty that it was paracetamol that was. And at the same time, to make it even more complicated, there have been plenty of other studies that have suggested the opposite. So a really big study out of Sweden, published last year, looked at 2.5 million children in Sweden over, I think it was 6 years, and they found, when they looked at brothers and sisters in particular, absolutely no link to paracetamol use. So certainly inconclusive evidence out there. Certainly, I think when you speak to doctors and people in the medical profession, not enough for Mr. Trump, President Trump, to be making the comments he did last night.
So who is he being advised by then, Jim, to be saying this?
Well, it's interesting. It's obviously something he's been passionate about for many years. When he started his news conference last night, he talked about how he'd been looking forward to this moment for 20 years. And he's often talked about this big increase we've seen in autism diagnosis in the United States, 25 years since the year 2000, up from about 1 in every 150 children, he says, to 1 in every 31. So a big increase. I think most scientists, researchers out there would say the bulk of that increase is down to the fact that it's better recognised, and also the broadening of the criteria about what someone who is diagnosed with autism is actually like, whether it includes different types of symptoms.
Jim, really good to get your analysis. Thank you so much. Let's speak now to Mel Merritt, who is Head of Policy at the National Society. Mel, very good to have you with us. Can you give us a sense of what people have been saying to you, the reaction that there's been to this pronouncement from President Trump?
There's been shock and anger and fatigue that here we are again having to refute stupid ideas about autism, and we're not having the conversations we need to have about autism, about how do you make society work better for autistic people? What do we do about the chronic lack of autistic children that are having a horrible time at school and are more likely to be excluded? We're not having those conversations. We're having to debunk pseudoscience. There's been no basis for it. And so people are going out today feeling that they're being judged, they've been dehumanised by these comments. We've had a parent contact us and say that at the school gates today, when they were dropping off their autistic son, they felt like everyone was judging them. These words matter, and they make life harder for autistic people and their families.
Mel, society, how do you like to frame autism now?
Autism is a spectrum condition, and it affects how people communicate and experience the world. It's a really broad spectrum, and everyone is different on the spectrum. And some people have really high support needs, and they need support in place so that they can live life. And other people have low support needs, and they just need to have systems that are set up so they're not facing prejudice and stigma. So many autistic people say to us that they experience stigma, and the stigma that they experience means that they avoid going out, and that means they become more isolated and then affects their mental health.
And Mel, did you feel like that you were winning the battle against some of that stigmatisation, and what's happened overnight with President Trump?
Definitely sets us back. We've had to fight for decades because of the misinformation about vaccines, and then we've made great strides in understanding about autism, and yeah, it sets us back. Makes us have a debate we don't need to have. We need to be having and make life better for autistic people. How do we make society work better?
And what about guilt for those women as well who may be thinking, gosh, I took paracetamol when I was pregnant?
Yeah. People will be waking up this morning and feeling guilt and wondering, is it them? And like your previous guest said, basis in science for that. That guilt is completely unfounded and needs to not be in people's lives.
Mel, thank you so much for joining us. Really sad to hear some of the reactions that people have had today, the mum at the school gate particularly as well. Thank you so much.
Poland and Estonia are praising President Trump after he backed shooting down Russian planes and drones that violate NATO airspace. Russian aircraft have made incursions over NATO territory at least twice in the last few weeks. National security correspondent Charlie D'Agata explains what this could mean for the U.S.
Yeah, good evening, John. More than that, but the most significant incursions 2 weeks ago, Russia flew 19 drones over Poland, 4 were shot down. But then last Friday, 3 Russian MiGs entered Estonian airspace for a full 12 minutes. And this part is key. Pay attention to this. The Estonian military says those pilots had they weren't communicating with air traffic control. Essentially, they were intentionally ignoring warnings. And as you said, President Trump said NATO should shoot down Russian aircraft, and whether the U.S. would provide support for that, he said, well, that would depend.
Well, that's the question. That would depend. I mean, the U.S., isn't that a pretty big item to be left up in the air?
It is indeed, yes. So NATO is and has always been a military alliance, right? So the jets that were scrambled to intercept those Russian threats have come from Italy, Sweden, and Finland. And it kind of comes down to who's on deck. British fighter jet to the region in what NATO is calling its new operation, Eastern Sentry, to bolster NATO defenses. So the United States is already deeply involved. They have a significant military presence in the region, largely Poland. They may have avoided using U.S. fighter jets, but the point is the alliance doesn't need the blessing of the United States president to shoot down Russian aircraft. And it's already happened. Back in 2015, a Turkish F-16 shot down a Russian bomber. And that was the last serious flashpoint. Russia's not only testing military capabilities, but also NATO's resolve.
We got about 20 seconds, Charlie. What does the Pentagon make of the president's claim that Ukraine should take back all the territory that Russia's taken since its invasion?
That raised eyebrows even from my friends and colleagues in Ukraine that I spoke to. In practical terms, that would mean retaking that territory, a huge military operation. I was at a flashpoint that now is a flashpoint, Lyman, where Ukrainian forces liberated that town back in October 2022. 3 years later, they're literally still fighting over those streets and neighborhoods.